What's up, everyone? Got George and Max here. We're breaking down every project from the MCU, 32 projects, 32 days, leading up to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness coming out very shortly. Welcome back to the rewatch. George, we're talking about Loki tonight. What'd you think? Second time through, first time watching it consecutively.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is another one like WandaVision and like Falcon and Winter Soldier in that it gets its strengths from its core concept, and that's from its core filmmaking concept. Because like WandaVision, there's a lot of intrigue, and you get a sense of the mystery that brings people back every week. However, like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you get to see the arc play through when you binge it, and it works so well as one cohesive unit. So, you know, there are strengths to watching it in each style, I think. And you know, I love the show. Watching it through all at once the first time, or watching it through all at once today for the first time. The last time I watched it was week by week. I think I got a real sense of the stakes. Week by week, you're overanalyzing everything. You're not really you're seeing the mystery, but you're not really watching all of the events take place in sequence. And I think sequence is a big part of a time-based story. You get a sense of the stakes and what the TVA and the multiverse possibilities mean when you watch this show all the way through at once. Tom Hiddleston continues to give probably the best performance of any actor in the MCU. I would be hard pressed to find anyone else who matches him moment for moment. Although Sophia DiMartino does a pretty good job in this
She's
series.
great. Yeah.
We're going to talk about her more in a minute, but I think Hiddleston plays really well as an anti-hero. The trickster, someone who's going to manipulate his way into and out of situations, but also as a character who, at his core, is scared a lot of the time. And I think during the course of the events of this series, he is scared of the stakes of the story he has put himself into. And I think the way that Tom Hiddleston is able to deliver a performance that is both funny and charismatic, but also terrified and really aware of how big everything is in the multiverse is really a fine line to walk, and he does it masterfully. It's a word, right?
Yeah. Masterfully.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is such an interesting concept of a show to introduce so many different, really high level concepts that really complicate things going forward for the MCU. You know, variants, branching of time, um, alternate realities. The multiverse gets fleshed out here really nicely.
Better than it ever had before.
Better than it. Yes, good point. I mean, so many different concepts. The TVA is something that we can talk about in a little bit, but gosh, to pack all that into like 6 hours of TV is really, really difficult. And I think the showrunners did a really fantastic job, helped by, obviously, like you said, George, stellar performances by the actors.
Yeah, let's get into the cast a little bit.
Yeah.
We've talked about, or I've talked about Hiddleston, but Owen Wilson is first time in the MCU here.
Wow.
Wow, Loki, we're doing the show about the multiverse. You can catch my impressions on TikTok. Not really, but maybe. Owen Wilson's here for the first time. Sophia DiMartino. You get Jonathan Majors in episode 6.
Yep.
Um,
And then fun cameos throughout with Richard E. Grant playing old
Classic Loki.
classic Loki. I'm forgetting the other two actors' names. Of the
Well,
other
you also not even cameos, but in terms of supporting roles, Wunmi Masaku as Hunter B-15, Gugu Mbatha Raw as Ravonna
Judge
Renslayer.
Renslayer. Yep.
These are really, really talented actors who joining the MCU for a series with these stakes and the possibility of using these characters again as the multiverse gets fleshed out in phase 4 and beyond. It's an absolutely stellar cast. And now, Owen Wilson aside, because, he's Wedding Crashers and Wes Anderson movies and Lightning McQueen. You get all of these actors in here who, I may not have been that familiar with their work before this, and now I'm going to go out there and look for projects starring Wunmi Masaku and Sophia DiMartino because of how great they are in this series.
Yeah, and that is what's so great about shows like this is you get long exposure to performances, and you really get to sit with some of the decisions that the actors made, for better or for worse. In Loki, I would argue it was generally
Mostly
for better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is a really strong show. And I think we've talked about this before, but for me, binging really helped.
It did.
I struggled a little bit on an initial watching, my first time watching through, with how much like wandering around there was in the first couple of episodes. I understand that that's kind of what it was supposed to be, but it meandered a little bit.
It takes this show, and I noticed it more binging it today than, again, watching it all the way through last time.
Yeah.
Week by week. I really noticed that it does take probably until the midpoint of the second episode when they go to Roxcart in Alabama in 2050 for the show to find its footing and really take off on its story, because you had so much legwork in episode 1 and the first part of episode 2 to establish your concept and establish your world.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And, again, the visuals of the TVA and the way that they present, Renaissance fairs and ancient, or not, I keep using the word ancient wrong, and I apologize for that. But historic France.
Yeah.
Futuristic corporate towns in Alabama. Lamentus won the moon in episode 3 in 2077.
Yep.
I mean, we're not even talking far future until the end of time. This is, the events on Lamentus take place 55 years from now.
Yeah.
It's not a long time. So they're able to weave together a believable story in such a way that works for a show and concept that would lead you to believe that in the wrong hands would go off the rails really quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of going off the rails, let's not do that and get into some rankings.
Where were you going with that?
Yeah. I know what. I want to make funny. Yeah. So why don't you tell us what you have it, George?
Yeah. So it's going to be top 10. I was worried it might not stay there on this rewatch, but I'm going to throw it at pretty close to the bottom of my top 10. It's going to be number 9, second of my MCU shows, behind WandaVision, which we talked about a couple days ago. But it's a tremendous show. It sets up the future of the MCU in a way that just makes me so excited for the multiversal possibilities. Obviously, we have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. You know, I'm seeing it in a week. Max, you're seeing it in a week. It's coming out in a
Yep.
week.
Yep.
We're just a week away, guys.
Huh.
But yeah, I'm so excited for that movie, due in no small part to this series. So for that reason, I am also going to put it in the A range. It's going to be borderline A- and an A. I'm going to give it a 92 out of 100. So it's up there. You should watch Loki if you haven't.
Great. Yeah, this might be one of our largest gaps, or if not the largest, one of the largest.
I have no idea which way you're going with this.
I'm gonna give it, or I'm gonna rank it 16 out of 32. It
Okay.
is right in the middle. And I say this because I still think that with all of the concepts they introduced and how well they explained them, which they did a really good job of doing, it still felt on when I was watching, it still felt like that there was too much just sort of like wandering around. And obviously I know that there was a purpose, but I think it was just a little bit too slow. And that's okay. I still will watch this again. I still recommend it. But it bumps it down a little, just, a couple of spots. And I'm going to give it out of 184. So the 16 out of 32 is purely based off of there being 15 other projects that I think are better. But also it losing a little bit, some of its momentum because of the pace. And the 84 is, I think, the number I want you to pay attention to, because it's a very good show, especially as I have rewatched it again. I think it will continue to get better. It'll age well.
It's aged well for me.
Yeah.
Again, I like I said, I expected it might drop, and it didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that's going to do it for us. We will see you tomorrow night for one of our final episodes of the rewatch. So stay tuned.
We're talking about the first movie of Phase 4.
Ooh.
Have fun with Black Widow tomorrow.
Good night.
Good night.